Only 4 seasons ago, Polish Ekstraklasa was hovering around 30th place in the UEFA coefficient rankings, behind Belarus, Kazakhstan or Azerbaijan. Despite Poland having world-class players playing for the biggest clubs in Europe, the domestic league was embarrassing itself on the European stage, losing to teams from Estonia or Luxembourg, and failing to qualify for the group stages of European competitions between 2017 and 2020. Poland had 2 teams play in the Champions League in the 1990s, but what they didn't know is that the next time they would qualify would be 20 years later. For much of the 2000s and 2010s, Polish clubs have been underachieving in Europe. In the 2000s, the league was dominated by Wisła Kraków, who were financed by one of the richest men in Poland. They came close to European glory on a few occasions, but they always lacked a little bit of luck, whether it's on the pitch or off the pitch, as they often drew top teams like Real Madrid or Barcelona in the Champions League qualifiers. In the 2010s, when Wisła Kraków ran into financial problems, the league was dominated by Legia, but they were not dominating the Polish league like teams such as Dynamo Zagreb, Ludogorets or Celtic, who always win the league and then end up playing in the Champions League or Europa League. Legia was able to win 3 titles in a row at their best and slipped up in the league few times, allowing teams like Piast Gliwice to win their first title. In Europe, they also lost to teams like Spartak Trnava or, as previously mentioned, Dudelange from Luxembourg. Other Polish teams were not doing much better. Lech Poznań lost to a team from Iceland, Cracovia lost to a team from Macedonia, and the 2019 champions Piast Gliwice lost to Riga FC from Latvia. Therefore, when the newly elected president of Ekstraklasa said that the top 15 of UEFA rankings is his goal, many people would have laughed. But now, in 2025, Ekstraklasa is sitting exactly in 15th place. So what changed? In my opinion, Poland has been a sleeping giant for many years, a country with a population of nearly 40 million people, and despite Poland being great at other sports like volleyball, football has always been the #1 sport. Thanks to the 2012 Euros, the infrastructure is on a high level and there is a lot of amazing modern stadiums, which cannot be said about many leagues from Eastern Europe. There are 4 stadiums with a capacity of 30,000 or more in the top division and 2 more in the second tier. New modern stadiums are constantly being built. GKS Katowice just opened up their 15,000 seat stadium in 2025 and Górnik Zabrze are upgrading their stadium to a capacity of 31,000. And these stadiums are being put to use. In 2023-24 season, Poland had 5.8 million fans attend football games, which put them in 8th place in Europe. In 24-25 season, the record for a most attended club game was broken, and it happened in the second division as over 50,000 fans attended a game between Ruch Chorzów and Wisła Kraków. The interest has been increased thanks to tickets being well priced, well-run social medias, with highlights being posted on YouTube. Due to the interest being higher, Ekstraklasa has been breaking financial records. Last season, Ekstraklasa clubs generated 1,168 million zloty, which is about 275 million euros. It's a 27% increase in comparison to the previous season. Polish clubs in 2010s were selling their best players for around 5 million euros maximum, but those numbers have increased thanks to good performances in Europe. Ekstraklasa sold 5 players for 10 million euros or more in the last 5 years. Because of revenues increasing, Polish teams have started to spend more money. Record purchase by an Ekstraklasa team was 1 million euros for Maciej Żurawski in 1999, and it stood for over 20 years, but this record was beaten 3 times in the last 5 years, with Ruben Vinagre currently being the most expensive purchase ever at 2.5 million euros. Raków especially isn't afraid of investing money, as they spent 10 million euros over the last 2 years. Polish teams scored some points in 2021 and 2022 seasons in the Europa League, but I have to admit that the addition of a third European competition helped, as the majority of the points scored by the Polish teams were in the Conference League. 22-23 season was the catalyst of the rise in the coefficient rankings, as Lech Poznań went all the way to the quarterfinals, but the season didn't start well as they got destroyed in the first round of Champions League by Karabag. Lech had to go through 3 rounds of Conference League qualifiers, which they managed to do. In the group stage they were a bit inconsistent, but they eventually managed to finish in second place thanks to a huge 3-0 win in the last matchday over Villarreal. Lech then beat 2 Scandinavian teams in the next 2 rounds, Bodo Glimt and Djurgardens before eventually losing to one of the better sides in the competition, Fiorentina, but it was a great run that helped Poland to jump up to 24th place in the ranking. Next season, Legia followed them by also qualifying for this competition. They did this in a thrilling fashion after firstly edging out a Kazakh team Ordabasy 5-4 on aggregate. In the next round they played Austria Vienna, and after losing the first leg at home 2-1, they had to make a comeback in the second leg. Legia started the game amazingly, winning 3-0 after 60 minutes, but they started slipping up after that and the Austrian team got 2 goals back. Legia scored in the 87th minute but then conceded again in the 97th minute, which meant that the game was going to extra time, or it would have if Legia didn't score in the 100th minute to win the game 5-3 and the tie 6-5 on aggregate. Danish side Midtjylland was waiting in the last game, and this game was also eventful, finishing 4-4 on aggregate with Legia winning the penalty shootout 6-5. In the group stage, they drew a Bosnian side Zrinski, as well as AZ Alkmaar and Aston Villa. The highlight of Legia's story in this tournament was definitely beating the English side 3-2 at home. Legia finished second in the group, just behind Villa, and qualified for the knockout stage where they were dismantled by Molde 6-2 on aggregate. Nevertheless, Polish League again scored some points and moved up to the 21st place in the ranking. For the 24-25 season, the goal was to get close to the top 15 and attack in the following year, but what happened was something that nobody, even the most optimistic fans, would have expected. Jagiellonia, the surprising champions of 2024, had a low coefficient score, which resulted in them being drawn against tough opponents. First Bodo Glimt in the Champions League and then Ajax in Europa League. They lost these matches but ended up in the Conference League anyway. Legia qualified for Conference League for the second year in a row after knocking out a Danish side, Brøndby. That was a huge result as Denmark was one of the countries competing with Poland for a spot in the top 15. A second division side, Wisła Kraków, surprisingly won the Polish Cup. There was not much hope for them to go far, but they did surprise Polish fans by knocking out a Slovakian side, Spartak Trnava. Wisła was one round away from qualifying to Conference League, but the level of Cercle Bruges was too high for them. The same goes for St. Gallen, who knocked out Śląsk Wrocław. However, 2 teams playing in Europe again was a good result, and those 2 teams continued to perform well, both getting 3 wins from the first 3 games, which resulted in them sitting at the top of the table next to Chelsea. The results were not as good in the second part of the league phase, but Legia still managed to finish 7th and Jagiellonia 9th, with the highlights of the league phase being Legia's victory over Real Betis and Jagiellonia's win over Copenhagen. In the round of 16, Jagiellonia played Cercle Bruges and got revenge for Wisła Kraków as they beat the Belgian side 3-2 on aggregate. Meanwhile, Legia was also looking to take revenge on the team that they lost to last year, Molde, and the first game went just like the first game last year. Molde got 3 quick goals and then Legia responded with 2. However, the second leg went differently as Legia overcame the odds and knocked out the Norwegian side 4-3 on aggregate after extra time. The other results went in Poland's favour, like Chelsea knocking out Copenhagen and Celje knocking out Lugano. These results meant that Poland would finish in the top 15. Something that seemed impossible a few years ago was accomplished. In the quarterfinals, Polish teams were against the big teams, Chelsea and Real Betis. The 2 future finalists proved to be too much for the Polish sides, but they didn't go without a fight. Jagiellonia managed to get a draw in the second leg and lost 3-1 on aggregate. Meanwhile, Legia won at Stamford Bridge but lost 4-2 on aggregate. And fun fact, I actually attended this game. I think the appearance of Raków pushed other teams to do better. In 2014, Polish businessman Michał Świerczewski took over his local team, Raków Częstochowa. At the time they were in the 3rd tier, but they climbed the ranks through smart recruitment and patient project building under coach Marek Papszun. They got promoted to Ekstraklasa in 2019, and just 2 seasons later they were fighting for the championship and winning the Polish Cup. Many Polish teams would end up selling their best players after a good season in the past for a quick profit, but Raków had the financial backing which allowed them to keep their best players and improve. Over the last 5 years, I would say Raków only sold 3 of their key players, and they were all sold for good money as well, one of them even equaling the transfer sale record. The difference with Raków is that they never really had an embarrassing loss to a team from a smaller league. In their first season they beat Rubin Kazan in the qualifiers before losing to Ghent, who are not a bad team. In their second season in Europe, they lost in the playoff round to Slavia Prague. Again, not a bad team. In their third season, this time in Champions League qualifiers, they beat Karabakh and Aris Limassol on their way to the playoff round, where they narrowly lost to Copenhagen. They got to play in Europa League, where they ended up finishing last, but again, none of the teams they lost to were bad teams. Atalanta ended up winning the Europa League, Sporting won the Portuguese League, and Sturm Graz beat Red Bull Salzburg to the title that season. Another turning point was the rise of modern Polish coaches. New managers embraced progressive tactics, including high pressing and positional play. Marek Papszon, at the age of 41, started his journey with Raków, which is still going on to this day, 10 years later, but we can find even younger managers in Ekstraklasa right now. After coming to Poland to study at the age of 20 and working as a video analyst and an assistant manager, Gonzalo Fejo worked his way all the way to becoming a manager of the biggest club in Poland at the age of 35. Adrian Siemieniec, who achieved with Jagiellonia their first Ekstraklasa title and a quarterfinal of Conference League, is only 33. The manager that replaced Gonzalo Fejo at Motor Lubin, Mateusz Stolarski, is only 32. There is also Dawid Szwarga, who managed Raków during the 23-24 season, who is 34. He won the second division with Arka Gdynia, so we will be seeing him in Ekstraklasa again next season as well. As previously mentioned, there isn't one team that Polish fans would expect to see in the Champions League every season, like Serbian fans might expect with Red Star Belgrade, or Croatian fans might expect with Dinamo Zagreb. However, there is a few teams that are on Europa or Conference League level. The league was won by 4 different teams in the last 5 years, and all 4 of those teams qualified for European competitions at some point in those 5 years. There is also Pogoń Szczecin, who are like the Polish Spurs. They never won a single trophy, but they have been hovering near the top in recent years despite financial problems. In 2025, the club was taken over by a Canadian millionaire who paid off the debts and promised to invest more into the club. Widzew Łódź, a historic club that played in the Champions League group stage nearly 30 years ago, also have new owners who want to invest around 5 million euros in the summer transfer window, which is big money for Polish football that should move them up to near top of the table.